Jake, let's get into the game because BYU did not exactly look stellar last night. Now, of course, they get the win, but you see a lot of things that seem to be, is lack of discipline too harsh? Because that seems like the term that fits. 10 penalties, multiple neutral zone infractions, just really atypical Kalani Sitake football teams. What is your level of concern, Jake, with BYU right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm ultra concerned that the program is going in the wrong direction or anything. I just think, yeah, they're not playing disciplined football. Like, yeah, you're right. The penalties, the lack of execution in the run game in the first half, like, struggling with I guess what some people would call a triple option look, like just not prepared. And Kalani basically said, like, that this Utah State offense and what they rolled out was not what they had rolled out in any other game this year. So they were admittedly unprepared and had to make adjustments at the half. And I think that it's just crazy because I don't know, like, again, it just continues this trend of, every week you're going to get everyone's best, Like yesterday on the show, we were talking about how this was Utah State's Super Bowl, which it is, and they played their ass off undoubtedly. But I think for BYU, what you have to understand is people are waiting for you. People are like, yeah, we're going to Lavelle. We're gonna go and play BYU and give them everything that we have. And that, to me, is something that BYU needs to adjust to. You need to be prepared that people aren't just rolling into your stadium and like, yeah, it's just another week. We're playing BYU. Who cares? Right. Like, this is, like, people are fired up to play you. And I think that's because you're good. So, to me, my level of concern, to me, my feeling isn't really concern. It's more like, hey, like, you guys got to button up the program a little bit. Like, you guys got to you got to dial in your preparation, because saying, that, whether it was that they did something that you haven't seen or you just weren't prepared or whatever it is, the fact is you were getting rolled in the first half. Like, you were struggling. They were running basically at will. And then in the second quarter, after they had done a bunch of running in the first quarter, they started throwing it. And then in the second half, you lock down defensively, and what do you know? You pull away and win the game handily. So that's what I say. I just think I'm not that concerned per se. I just think it is it's very much a business, mindset. Like, hey, we did not do a good enough job getting ready, and we paid the price for that 2 weeks in a row, in my opinion. With the Wyoming thing, I felt like you were not prepared for Wyoming's physicality and their ability to run the football. And then this week against Utah State, I felt like you weren't ready for the run game once again. And obviously Utah State does it differently than Wyoming, but still it's one and the same. Run game one way, run game the other way. You can't stop the run early in games, and you for sure can't run the ball early in games. So I say my concern is for the run game on both sides of the ball, not necessarily for the program as a whole.
Yeah, and I think the stopping the run is a huge problem. You gave up 204 yards to a Utah State team, frankly, that has sputtered all season long, been wildly inconsistent. And for most of the first half, to my eyes, Utah State looked like the better team, and a lot of concerns that you mentioned, the penalties and the undisciplined football, the inability to stop the run. You just feel like this BYU football team is playing below its ability level, and I mean significantly
Definitely
below its ability level. It's shocking that the mistakes continue to pile up. And I guess the question that I have is BYU playing down to its competition, or is this just who this football team is? Because we didn't see these mistakes until we got to Oregon. Right now, you're heading to Las Vegas to take on a Notre Dame team, frankly, that's a heavy favorite.
Yeah.
Before you take on Arkansas, who's got Alabama this weekend. I don't know. I just feel like this is a team that's not – it's not that they're ill-prepared. They're just simply not mentally tough in the moment. And it is baffling to me that you repeatedly line up in the neutral zone, that you're repeatedly missing assignments in the run game. And I understand that you're rushing three and you're dropping 8, and I understand why that is the schematic against an inexperienced quarterback. But it just doesn't make sense against the run. I mean, this 3-man defensive line is getting absolutely dominated. And the other thing that stood out to me last night was you're rotating the right side of your offensive line, and I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
When you have Harris LaChance and Kingsley Suamataia as your guard and tackle on the right side, you're dominating. You're turning guys. You're running the football well. Miles Davis, again, here's another question I have. Why is Miles Davis not your starting running back?
Yeah.
Why is he not your full-time guy right out of the gate? Because Miles Davis in the second half, I thought was the difference maker in this game for the BYU Cougars, Jake, yet he doesn't seem to be the go-to guy at running back right now.
Yeah, and I think this is a function of, Kalani, if I'm being honest. I think that, and again, hear me clearly, I'm not saying Kalani is a bad head coach. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that I think Kalani, in his style and in the way he sort of goes about things, is not someone who likes to be real definitive about performance. Meaning that, okay, hey, Brooks was struggling, so against Wyoming, we're going to go running back by committee. Okay, Miles Davis had a coming out party against Wyoming of sorts, And so what did I say after Wyoming? Hey, he's got to do it again. Like we you just need to keep performing, keep producing, and take that role. And so to me, if I'm a head coach and I see Miles Davis do what he did last night, specifically in the second half, as you were just saying, he would be my starting running back. It just is as simple as that, because I feel like Christopher Brooks has had plenty of opportunities. And I get it. Christopher Brooks punched one into the end zone last night. Like, okay, cool. But it very much feels like a situation or a running back room that you would find in the NFL. All kinds of teams in the NFL have a guy that is their workhorse, their guy that basically drives the team down the field, and then they've got their bigger back for the end zone. Right? Like, that's what Jerome Bettis made a career on, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, I don't feel like this concept is very difficult, but I also struggle with this concept that you brought up about Harris LaChance and in the right side of this offensive line.
Say it. I want to hear you say it. Kingsley Suamataia.
Yeah, Kingsley Suamataia.
My man.
The guy is a stud. And I think the only thing I can think is that you were catering to injury management, meaning that you're better than Utah State. The only reason Utah State is in this game is because your defense was literally unprepared for anything that Utah State was rolling out in the first half. I am being harsh today on BYU because it was an embarrassing performance in the first half. Yeah. So to me,
is it disappointing? Is it frustration? Like, what is your emotion on this team?
I just think it's surprising. It's like it's like you're driving a Ferrari like a Toyota Corolla. Like, what are we doing? What is this defense? Like, to me, there are every defense can be run a certain way, right? Obviously, there are defenses that are played in different schemes all across the landscape, but core fundamentals never really change in football. If you're playing dime against obvious running downs, that's not really going to work out for you too well. And we saw that too often last night.
Well, and I think the absence of Malik Moore played a role. I mean, you give up a late passing touchdown. I mean, you just don't feel good coming out of this game.
It's not confidence-inspiring.
And that's why we said, and I think we've been saying it for 2 weeks, Utah State is a very dangerous game. Utah State is a trap game. Utah State is one of those games where you just didn't feel like you were going to play as well as you should have played. It was a Thursday after a Saturday. You just didn't feel like this was going to be an easy game, and it certainly was not. Now, having said that, I have no reason to believe, and we'll ask Harris LaChance about this at 8:30 as Harris joins us, presented by Papa Murphy's Pizza. But I just think that a guy like Harris LaChance, who I think has been pretty bluntly honest with us about issues on this team, you can't tell me they're happy with their performance. This isn't one of those things where you're like, well, we got the win, we can move on.
Yeah.
This is a game that you feel like there's a reason Harris was posing with the wagon wheel at midfield after the game. Like, this was a game they cared about. Yeah. And it's a little surprising to come out and get the penalties that you got. I mean, and there's a lot of good in this game. I think, to your point, I thought Christopher Brooks got you some nice hard yards, ran effectively. Miles Davis ran effectively. Certainly seeing a guy like Gunnar Romney, even with the drop touchdown, to see Gunnar Romney back on the field, to see him being explosive, to see Keanu Hill again dominating. I mean, there's a lot to like in this game. but it's starting to mount the insecurities across this defensive line, the insecurities stopping the running game, the penalties, the mental mistakes, the mediocrity that just seeps into a game and then becomes dominant in that game.
Yeah, and I thought the substitution penalty in the first half was a perfect example of this. I mean, Utah State's clearly running the hurry up because they know that your defense is going to struggle with the pace, and you got a guy who's probably 15 yards away from the sideline when the ball is snapped as a 12th man on the field for your defense. Like, it wasn't close, and to me, again, like I do feel like, obviously I'm being hard on BYU today, but I think it's warranted. Like, I feel, honestly, I was thinking about this, last night watching this game, like, yeah, you beat Baylor in a really tight game where, Jake missed some kicks and you pulled it through, and like, you had that big emotional, upbringing in that game. And then I feel like we haven't really bounced back from that. I feel like you got your ass kicked by Oregon. I feel like Wyoming was, just not a great performance. And then Utah State happens. And too often, this team comes out really slow. Like, it's amazing to me that on your home field at Lavelle, man, that you would come out and just, for lack of a better word, just get dominated. You got dominated in the first quarter. That was an ugly first quarter, which is why, we said on the picture for today's show that BYU football is ugly right now, because it is. And I wonder against Notre Dame and against Arkansas and later down the line when you're playing P5 talent, hey, when you get down by 10 points, let's say, there's no coming back from that for this team. This team's not good enough, right? You're not good enough to get down 10 to Oregon in the first quarter, which is what happened, and then you lost 31-7.
The slow starts are a legitimate concern. When you look at the slow starts that you've seen, it's now a pattern. This is not a one-off. Well, we just had a bad start at Autzen Stadium. No, because you came home, you had a bad start against Wyoming, you've had a bad start against Utah State. You can't do that against Notre Dame. You can't do that against Oregon. Oregon, Arkansas. The best teams you face come out with their foot on the gas, especially when you're on the road, when you're at Autzen Stadium or you're at Allegiant taking on a Notre Dame club. You better come out ready to go. And these slow starts are certainly concerning. But I don't generally. I like A-Rod. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the play calling last night. I don't understand the running back rotation last night. Frankly, I don't understand. I don't understand why you're not playing aggressive football out of the box.
Yeah,
I just don't understand it. And when you see that guys like Chase Roberts aren't a go and Puka Nacua, who was available to play last night but didn't. Okay, I want more tight end then. I want, I want more from this football team. And looking at the targets and looking at the distribution, I wasn't happy with that in the first half.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to get Miles Davis the football. He's your number one running back. He brings an explosive, quick guy to the backfield that Chris Brooks just is not. Christopher Brooks is more of the hammer, and that has real value.
Yeah.
And I'm fine if you're saying but it's got to be Miles Davis on the field when the game starts because he is a different caliber of running back. I look at the use of guys like Cosper. I have no doubt that Cosper's got the goods. He's a phenomenal route runner. Like, that was one of the things that really stood out to me last night.
He got hands too. That was a nice catch.
That was a nice catch, but you're wasting Jaron Hall right now. The guy is playing phenomenal football. You have over a dozen scouts at the game. Not that matters in your play calling, but it's a tip of the cap to Jaron. You're getting good offensive line play, and you're putting Jaron Hall in a less than ideal situation to succeed. And I'm a big believer, whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Jaron Hall, you've got to run an offense that is best suited to your talent. Run Miles Davis and allow Jaron Hall to operate in the pocket, outside of the pocket, in the run game. Allow Jaron Hall to play to his strengths, because that's the only way you're going to get the best offense.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to get the best out of each one of your players. And again, I just simply go back to the fact that you've got All-American candidates on the offensive line. You've got huge size. You've got a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback. Let those guys carry the football team. Let those guys help the defense. Help get the defense off the field. Let's run some more. Let's be committed to the run more. That's what I just don't understand some of the play calling. Because I think one of the things that people don't understand is you're not calling plays one at a time. Especially to start a game, you're going to come out with a package of 10 plays you've scripted, and then you're going to adjust. You should be calling one play to set up the next play. Mm-hmm. You should be calling plays on a drive to set up the next drive. I just don't see that kind of cohesive thinking right now offensively. And again, I don't think the offense is as big a problem as the run defense is. But Agreed. You see these things on offense that really should be helping the defense, and yet you're not. You're going 3 and out, and against Utah State, that's just not good enough.
Yeah, and I think even if you've won the game, I wouldn't be surprised if you fell in the rankings, honestly, because it was not a good showing. And I think that it's too often I ask the question of why you're throwing behind the line of scrimmage on third down. Like what is the thought process? Why why not come out and really establish that offensive line and get your offensive lineman off the ball, man? Like that to me is what's surprising, because I do feel like when BYU does have dialed in play calling, they're tough to stop. I mean, because you have Jaron and because you have emerging talents that are becoming problems like Keanu Hill and
Cody Epps. Telling you,
dude,
I can only say it so many times. Cody Epps is a stud.
Yeah.
And you've got to get him the football.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Jaron's talented enough to feed these guys. Like, put it in his hands.
I look at Epps, Cosper, and Gunnar Romney leading the way.
Yeah.
That's 13 receptions right there out of guys who haven't contributed all season long. Like, I look at Braden Cosper. He's not a guy you've counted on all season long.
Yeah.
But with Puka not in the lineup, and from what I understand, I was told that Puka was dealing with a hamstring, not with an ankle, is what his issue was last week on that odd play where he re-injured himself. He was available to play last night, but he didn't. So you had a nice slate of guys like Ethan Erickson's touchdown catch was a fantastic throw and catch.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're also running the football at a clip where your best backs as a team, you ran for 3.7 yards a carry. But Miles Davis carried it 8 times, 39 yards. That's 5 yards a carry. You're getting Chris Brooks for 11 carries and 90 yards. That's 8.2 yards a carry. Run the football more effectively. Let that run game set up the play action. Call plays to set up more plays. That's what. There's just cohesiveness is the word that I'm looking for.
Well, and look, I what we're not saying is that A-Rod needs to be fired or it's some ridiculous thing, but like I think a lot of people go to that in BYU world. Like a lot of people will be like, oh well, Tuiaki needs to be fired after the Oregon loss, or this guy needs to go after this bad performance, and it's like, firing people is just a convenient answer to a football team struggling. I just think that this team needs to find its stride again. I felt like against USF you had your stride. Against against Baylor, like you battled, you were in that game, you fought and won that game, and then to get trounced by Oregon, I felt like really sort of like you were climbing, like there was a lot of momentum in the program, and then it just shot you down. And now you've had 2 opponents that you should have dominated and beat by, like, not exaggerating, 4 or 5 touchdowns, and you didn't do that. And I think now you're going up against legit talent. Whatever you want to say about Notre Dame, they're a legit P5 team. And this is a big time game for your season, man. If you come out and you get blown up by Notre Dame, like, I don't even know what you say or what the point of the rest of the season is, bro.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I see all of your comments. Stick around. Obviously, you guys make the show great.